Welcome. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah.
Amen.
Amen.
Thank you. Let me go ahead and share the screen. And here we are, continuing the blessing. So, Ula Asher Amar, and to Asher he said, Baruch mi banim Asher. Blessed or favored of sons is Asher. We read this. I feel like I remember reading this. At any rate, but still, he ritzui echav, may he be the favorite of his brothers, v'tovel b'shem and dip his feet in oil. Yeah, we definitely did this yesterday. Let me look and see. Okay, so we really should, I probably should have moved this down to here, to Barzel Unachoshet. Okay, let me see where we are. Here we are. Yes. Barzel Unachoshet min alecha. Iron and copper or brass are your locks. It's like a key lock, like a door lock, right? Uchiyamecha, and according to your days, dov echa, your weariness. That does sound weird, but Rashi's going to explain that and how to understand this. And he has actually a beautiful interpretation. So let's take a look. Barzel unachoshet min alecha. So iron and copper are your locks. Achshav hu midaber keneged kol Yisrael. So right now, Rashi's saying that Moses is referring this to all the Israelites, not just to Asher. So let's take a look, because there's also a way to understand it in regards to Asher as well. But right now he's saying this we should understand, at least in this interpretation, that he's referring to all of the Jewish people, right? Shahayu giburehem yoshvin be'arei hasfar. It says because they're men of valor, they're mighty men, would sit in the cities of the border, and the border cities, v'no'alim ota, and they would lock it, shelo yichlu ha'oivim, so that the enemies would not be able to likanes, to enter into it, ki'ilu hi skura b'man ulim uvrichayim shel barzel unachoshet, as if they were closed up, these cities were, or the land of Israel was closed up with man ulim, so bar locks, uvrichayim, that refers to bars that you put on a door, shel barzel, of iron, unachoshet, and copper. And now he has a davar acher, different interpretation. Barzel unachoshet min alecha, right? So your locks are made out of iron and copper. Artzachem neula baharim. So in other words, what it's referring to is your land is locked up with mountains, shechotzvin mehen barzel, from which you mine out iron, unachoshet, and copper. V'artzor shel Asher, and the land of Asher, Haitam Man'ula shel Eretz Yisrael, and the land of Asher, the territory of Asher, was the lock of the land of Israel. So when it says Man'ula, and he's referring to this particular way of understanding this metaphor, that those hills locked up, right? In other words, I think what he's saying is that because they had to mine out the iron ore and the copper, that it was like as if those were locked up in those hills. I think that's what he's trying to say. Ukiyamecha dovecha, and like your days, your weariness. And just as the days that were good days for you, that are the opening, the start of a person's life, right? The early years when you're strong. They were the days of your origin, the days of your youth. In other words, the early times when they came into the land of Israel and they were successful and they were prospering, etc. So just like those early days, Ken Yehu Yemei Ziknatcha, so your later years, your elder years, your elderly years should be. Shehen Dovim Doavim, right? Because they are weary, Zavim, faint, umitmotatim, and declining. In other words, that your later years where you start to sense weakness, they should be just as good as your early years. A beautiful interpretation there, in the hopes that Asher should be that. Here, Dov Echa. So here we go. So davar acher, another interpretation, uchayamecha dov echa, and like your days, right, your weariness, your late years, uchayamecha shehem tovim lach keminyan yamecha, right, and like the day, let me make sure, and like your days, which were good for you, keminyan yamecha, according to, I think that's, yeah, I'm looking to see for sure, like the count, the number of your days, kol hayamim asher atem osim ritzono. This is what he's saying. All the days which you do, you perform the will, shel makom, of the divine, of God, you dov echa, that is, I just want to make sure I've got this down. Your time of weakness, I guess, or those who are weak. Shekol ha'aratzot. Oh, I see. Okay. All right, I see. So it's okay. The word dov echa is also, the dalet is also related to a zayin, right? They're both dental letters, d and z. So the word dov echa can mean those who flow to you. Shekol ha'aratzot. Forgive me, I had to think back on what this was saying. So dov echa here means those who flow to you. Shekol ha'aratzot yiyu dov ot kesef, that all the other lands should send their flow of money, v'zahav, and their gold, their silver and their gold, le'eretz Yisrael, to the land of Israel, shetehei mevorechet b'peirot, which would be blessed with fruit, in other words, abundant, wonderful, good fruit, v'chol ha'aratzot, and all the lands, mitparnesot, they sustain themselves, hemena, from it. In other words, they import from the land of Israel these wonderful produce and fruit. Umamshichot la kaspam, and they send their money to her, v'zahavam, or rather their silver and their gold. And he gives you a French word, escourant. A K in French does not look like its usual, but maybe in mid-French, I don't know. I'm not familiar. I know courant means like running, but I bet it sort of means flowing, something like that. Losen souffliessen, right? To let flow, let go, something like that. And fleecen may have to do with the English word flow. Maybe it's Saxon in origin, right? HaKesef hazahav kale mehem, the silver and the gold gets used up from them. Shehein mazivot otam la'artzachem, because they're going to cause them to flow to your land. So again, this certainly is a blessing. Those two words, right? Kiyamecha dov echa, those that flow to you. Onwards. So now we go on. Ein ka'el Yeshurun. Okay, there is none like the God of Yeshurun, Rochev Shamayim, who rides the skies, be'ezrecha, to aid you, uvegavato shchakim, and the heavens, gavato, in his majesty, shchakim, the heavens. So this ends in the strength, the power of the divine to come to the aid of the Jewish people. So, Ein Ka'el Yeshurun, There is none like the God of Jeshurun. Here using the word Jeshurun to describe Israel from Yashar, straight, righteous ones. Before we came across that word, and that was in Ha'azinu, where he was using it ironically, but here he is using it in a serious, praiseworthy kind of way. Dalacha Yeshurun, know for sure, know for certain, O Jeshurun, she'ein ke'el, that there is no God b'chol Elohei avdei kochavim, amongst all the gods of the idolaters, v'lo ketzurcha tzurcham, that your rock is not like their rock, like what they depend on, what you depend on, what you can stand on, they can't do. What they're standing on is not something to stand on. Rochev Shamayim, who rides the heavens, Hu Oto Eloha Shebe'ezrecha, that is the God who comes to your aid, Uvaga'avato, and in his majesty, Urochev Shakim, he rides the heavens onwards. Me'ona Elohei Kedem, right? So this again, the language is just really tight and difficult to sort of understand easily. We'll see how Rashi handles this, right? Your ancient God, right? Elohei Kedem, God, ancient God, Me'ona, his habitation, right? Or is her habitation, or something else. It can mean something else too, but essentially having to do with a ma'on. A ma'on is a place of habitation. Could be a possibly refuge, right? The ancient God is her refuge. Umitachat zroot olam, and below the arms of the world. We'll see again, arms are going to be a metaphor as well, or support the arms of the world, or forever, something like that. V'yigaresh mipanecha oyev, he will chase away from you the enemy, v'yomer hashmeid, and say, destroy. Again, this is the nature of poetry. Take a look at the Rashi. Me'one Elohei Kedem. Le'ma'on heim hashchakim le'Elohei Kedem. So in other words, the heavens are a habitation for the God, for the ancient God. Shekadam lechol Elohim, because he existed before any of the other gods that the other nations worship. Uvirer lo shchakim, and he chose the heavens, the shivto, for his habitation, umeonato, and again, ma'on is a place to stay, a refuge, something like that. Umitachat ma'onato kol ba'alei zroa shochnim, and underneath his habitation, his place, Kol Ba'alei, all those who are powerful, all the powerful ones reside. And that's the Zroot Olam, right? So because arms have to do with power and control and strength. V'yagaresh mipanecha oyev, he will chase away from before you the enemy, v'yomar lacha hashmedotam, and say to you, destroy them. Again, enemies, how do we define enemies? We've talked about that idea too, whether the enemies are external or the enemies are internal. Whether what we're saying is that God helps us ourselves to overcome those elements within us that are destructive. Ma'ona, so again, this word ma'ona, so Rashi is going to say to the habitation. Kol tevat shetzricha lamed achareha, I'm gonna guess. Oh, betchilata. Any word that needs a lamed, the lamed means two or four, right? Hatilla heba sofa. You can, or hitilla heba sofa. There's an alternative of list something. You can put a hey at the end of the word, and it also has the meaning of to that place. So we'll take a quick look and see how that might work. So he's saying that this hey, right? All right. So it means the ancient God is to his inhabitation, right? So in other words, that God is present everywhere is essentially what it's saying, right? By saying God is present in the heavens, up here, etc. Okay, let's see if we can go on here. Vayishkon Yisrael betach. Okay, Israel dwelt securely. Badad ein Yaakov. Actually, betach badad ein Yaakov. Right. So Vayishkon Yisrael, we'll divide it up differently to how we're going to parse this out. Right. Badad means alone. Ein Yaakov. It could either mean ein, could mean the abode, it could mean fountain, like a ma'ayan. We'll see how Rashi actually translates this. He gives a very interesting take on this ein Yaakov here. Okay, so Vayishkan Yisrael betach badad. In other words, I think he takes all four words together. Israel dwelt securely alone. All those four together. And then El Eretz Dagan V'Tirosh, to a land of corn and wine. Af Shamav Yarfu Tfal, even its heavens, even his heavens drip with dew. Let's take a look here. Betach Badad. So he says, Kol Yachid V'Yachid Ish Tachat Kavod. So when he says Badad, it means each one. He says Badad. Badad just really means alone. So he says each individual, every man under his vine, V'Tachat Einato, and after his fig tree. Mefuzarim, they're all living separately. So what's the point of this? Ve'ein tzrichim lehit asef ve'leishev yachad mipnei ha'oyav. And they can live securely, even though they're living solitarily or singularly. They do not require to gather. They don't need to gather together and to dwell together on account of the enemy. In other words, they don't have to worry about being attacked. They can be exposed in that kind of way and feel secure about it. Ein Yaakov. So here's this Ein Yaakov. He says, Kamo, he says, he understands this Ein in the sense of Ve'eino, Ke'ein habedolach. That's in Numbers 11, where it says that it was talking about the manner, and that in other words, it looked like bdellium. It's how its texture, its look, its shape, etc. So he's saying, Ke'ein haBracha shebirchan Yaakov. So in other words, when it says Ein Yaakov, right, it's talking about the way in which the quality of Jacob's blessing. Lo kevadad, and it doesn't mean individually or solitarily, she'amar, which we find the solitarily used in Jeremiah chapter 15, badad yeshiva, yashavti, I dwelt alone. In other words, alone can also mean lonely and without any support, etc. That's not what it means. So he's saying, when he says Ein Yaakov, he's saying, I mean it in the sense that Jacob meant it. Ela ka'ein ha'havtacha, or havtacha, shehivticham Yaakov. But what we're talking about is that this is ka'ein, in a similar kind of way of the assurance, the promise that Jacob promised them. And that's back in Genesis chapter 48, V'haya Elohim imachem, where it says, and God will be with you, V'hishiv etchem el eretz avotechem, and he will bring you back to the land of your ancestors. Yarfu, so what does this word Yarfu mean? It means Yatifu, they will drip. Yarfu means they will drip. Giving a more common Hebrew word to translate this. Af Shamav Yarfu Tal, even his heavens will drip with dew. Af Birkato Shel Yitzchak. So he says, when he says Af, even, it says, even the blessing of Isaac, Nosefet al Birkato Shel Yaakov, is added to the blessing of Jacob. how Moses is blessing them. And here we are. Vayiten lacha Elohim mital hashamayim. This is the blessing with which Isaac blessed Jacob, right? God will give you from the dew of heavens, etc. One more verse, and this is the last verse of the blessing. Ashrecha Yisrael, happy are you, or fortunate are you, O Israel. Mi chamocha, who is like you? Am nosha badonai, a nation that is saved through God. Hashem, Magen Ezrecha, the shield of your help. V'asher cherev gavadcha, and so it says here. So whether this Asher means that, or whether it's referring to Ashrecha, right? And satisfied is the sword of your majesty. Vayikachashu oivecha lach, and your enemies will be subdued before you. Va'ata al bamotemu tidroch, and you will stand, you will trample on their high places. All this poetic statement. We'll see what we can do here. Betach bada. Sorry, 1 second. Sorry, let's go to the right place here. Ashrecha Yisrael, right? Fortunate are you, O Israel. La'achar sheparat lahem habrachot, after he specified their blessings to them, Amar lahem, he said to them, Ma li lifrot lachem klal, klal davar akol shelachem. He said to them, what is it for me? In other words, how am I capable? Am I really capable to specify to you anything? All is yours. It all comes from you. I'm not giving you, my blessing isn't really doing anything, because you are, as it were, already blessed. You're internally blessed. Ashrecha Yisrael mi kamocha, fortunate are you, O Israel, who is like you. Shu'atcha b'Hashem, your salvation is in God. God is, Hashem is the source of your salvation. Asher hu magen ezrecha, he is the shield of your help. V'asher hu cherev gavadcha, and God is also the sword of your majesty. Your enemies will be subjected to you, subdued by you. Kagon hagivonim, he gives an example of the Gibeonites, Shamru, who said in Joshua chapter 9, Me'eretz recho'oka ba'u avadecha. It says, notice they say, your servants came from a distant land. Their sense of themselves as being servants of the Israelites. Va'ata al bamotemu tidroch, and you will trample on their high places, ke'inyan shene'emar, as it states elsewhere, also in Joshua chapter 10, simu et raglechem al tzavarei, place your feet, on the necks of Amalachim ha'ela, these kings. Place your feet on the necks of these kings. So there's probably a good deal of other stuff to unpack here, but we have concluded the blessing. So Moses is basically blessing them with ability, with power, with divine help, etc., etc. And I'll mark the place here. And we will, with God's help, begin perhaps even tomorrow, the final chapter of the Torah. Here we go. So we've finished the poetry at this point, and I'm going to stop the share. And any comments before I stop the recording?
Well, I was just thinking, because we have a fig tree and grapevines.
Yes, me too.
I was identifying with that.
Wonderful. Making lots of fig jam. Yes, so in terms of the blessing, my sense always is that if God empowers us in this way, we should be gracious to anyone, and use our power to help those who are powerless. But at the same time, being able to protect yourself against the enemies it's an unfortunate necessity, and knowing that you'll be successful is very helpful. And we live in times when this is brought home quite a bit. All right, I'm going to stop the recording.